whose ancestral lands are on which we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country and pay our respect to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nation people. Thank you, everyone. Item 1 is apologies. I have an apology from Councillor Bland. Everyone else is in the room as per the change in the regulation back to normal meeting procedures. Acknowledgements. Councillors, I'd like to acknowledge the service of our outgoing Coorong Assessment Panel President, Mr Bruce Ballantyne. He presided at Menengi a week or so ago in the CAP for his last time, and he's chaired the CAP since 2017, according to this record. And during this 5 years of service, Bruce has chaired 19 CAP meetings. I went Thursday week, whenever it was, to Menengi, and his very professional manner was very evident to me, and I thanked him then, and I thank him publicly now and on the record for his service to this council. Confirmation of minutes. Item 2, ordinary council meeting held on the 21st of July, councillors. 21st of June, sorry. Councillor Roundtree, Taylor is the seconder. Is there any discussion? I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. And also the special meeting held on the 5th of July 2022. Councillors Qualman and Hill. Any debate? Discussion? Being none, I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously as well. Adjourned business, we have nil. Minute action list, councillors. Have we got any questions for the minute action list? Councillor Taylor.
277/21, meeting regarding regional bus route impacts. Target completion was February 2022 and review June 2022. Is there any further information, or should those dates be put back or adjusted?
We have one more follow-up meeting. We have one more follow-up meeting following that. So we had the meeting with Nick McBride, and then we also met with Education and raised it as an issue. And next week, the Mayor and I are going to talk to Bus SA, which is an association that covers school bus routes as well. So we haven't exhausted all avenues yet, but we can push that date out a little bit now.
Thank you.
Councillor Roundtree.
285/21, the Tail and Band playground fencing. It just says it's marked as completed. I just wanted to know, how is that? What part is the completed part? Just having put it on the list? So there's a part, it's about the point 3, the third dot point of that bit. It just says
285/21. Fence not cover what you're asking, councillor?
It says that it's going to be added to the 22-23 financial year budget briefing. So who adds it? And how is it added? Do we have to bring it up again, or?
Sorry, briefing should be taken out of that. It's in the budget.
Right, okay, thank you.
Anything else on the minute action list, councillors? Sorry, I am looking for someone on the screen which doesn't exist anymore.
No, correct.
Bit of habit. Okay, I'll take it there's no more minute action list. We move on to questions with notice, but before that I am going to read out my answers, or our answers, from Councillor Bland's questions taken on notice at the last ordinary meeting. The Councillor Bland referred to an article published in the May 22 Canalpin Hub newsletter by a councillor and asked how corrections could be made to the information in the article. We took this on notice. Our answer is that the Canalpin Hub is an independent newsletter. Any concerns with articles that appear should be addressed through the editor of that publication. Councillor Bland asked whether it was appropriate for councillors to use articles for electioneering and whether the Mayor or the Chief Executive Officer vet any councillor articles prior to publication. We took that question on notice. There are several mediums where councillors express their views, including letters to the editor, social media and district newsletters, as well as verbal conversations with community members. It is impossible to expect staff to vet or peruse these. Councillors are reminded that any external comment should be made in line with Section 63 of the Local Government Act, and specifically Code of Conduct for council members, to ensure that the reputation of council is maintained. And her third question we took on notice was asked for guidance on how to answer questions from members of the community on articles written by councillors. Councillors are expected to answer questions regarding motions decided in the chamber in line with Section 3 of the Local Government, Section 63 of the Local Government Act, specifically the Code of Conduct for council members. Questions about articles that appear should be directed to the author or the editor of the newsletter. Thank you, everyone. We move on to item 5.1, question with notice. There's none. Yes.
I would like to have your statements recorded in the minutes, please. I'd like to move that way.
Second.
There'll be a motion.
So we could put them in the questions with notice section without a motion to do that. So we'll just do that.
Be safer, would it be better to have it as a motion?
You can move thus if you want.
Yeah.
I'd suggest, councillor, you ask us to do that in motions without notice.
That's fine. Thank you.
I go on to questions with notice. We have Neil
There is, sorry.
with notice.
There's a question with notice I sent to the CEO on the 10th of July.
Through you, Mayor. Sorry, councillor, once I answered that, I should have clarified with you. I thought that it was answered. That's my fault. I just assumed that it was answered once I'd send it back to you.
I specifically wanted it recorded for the public.
I don't have it with me. Would you like to read it out?
With recent changes to the SA planning legislation and its administration, who is now responsible for keeping applicants and responders suitably informed regarding the process and any updates of all development applications, and who is responsible for inviting these persons to attend and participate before the Coorong Assessment Panel at the scheduled time?
And do you have the answer there in front of you?
Response from, no. Response from Miles.
Director.
Mayor, both Miles and I were answering you at the same time. I think for this particular one, there was a couple of backwards and forwards. So
Yep.
the response may have been from Miles initially.
Oh no, usual, this Microsoft Outlook, difficult to follow the thread. Response from you on the 11th of July. Back on deck, rested and refreshed. Thank you very much. Missing the sunshine. The information regarding representatives is as follows. All 27 responders were notified, 25 by email with a formal letter attached and 2 via mail, as no email was provided. No emails bounced back, so can only assume that notification was received. Council received confirmation back from 9 representatives that they were attending or an apology, with Ms. Cumultree's concerns they are noted. Unfortunately, it's difficult to find time that suits all concerned. It really didn't give the direct answer to the question I raised.
There was 3 or 4 emails. Councillor, if you're happy, I will get them and we will put them in the questions with notice. Mayor, is that okay with you?
I'll be happy if you can give a suitable response for the public.
For you, Mayor.
Thank
The
you.
response wasn't suitable, councillor?
It's not suitable to the responding to the question. I understand what you've said,
Which part of it
but it
was?
doesn't say whose responsibility it is, which I now know is council's. But for the information of the public, who may be interested in reading this, they would then be informed.
Okay. Councillor, I'm on questions with notice, so I've still got nil. I'll move on to questions without notice and start with you, Councillor Taylor. That's what you are.
Through you, Mayor. The question, all right, question without noise. The minutes are an accurate recording of information presented in this room.
Decisions made in this room.
Is that correct?
That's a recording of the decisions made in this room.
So is that an accurate recording? What's on the screen? Because if the CEO doesn't have it in front of her,
Through you, Mayor.
I think it'd be fair that the CEO could take the question on notice. The councillor feels that the response to him in a direct sense was perhaps not full enough.
Through you, Mayor. There was, I think, 3 or 4 emails at the time, councillor. So what we might do is I'll take the question on notice. I'll put all the emails together so that it does form a cohesive answer.
Go on, councillor. Yeah.
through you, Mayor, the member of the public approached yesterday. I met with a member of the public. I have informed you of the name by email of that person. I don't want to name the person in the chamber in case they're not happy with that. Is regarding the entrance statements at Tail and Bend and a request for consideration of his thoughts regarding the especially the Meningie end, but also to ask the question of when the original consultation was done and substantial monies were spent, including a grant, and money was budgeted from the council budget, which was 35,000, I think, for the grant and 25,000 from the council. What happened to the products for the entrance statements, and why has still nothing been done?
Which budget year do you understand that they were budgeted to?
2017, 2018, perhaps, or 2018, 2019?
Given that it's been raised today, Bridget.
So I have your email, councillor, and we're just tracking down the items that you've asked a question about. I suppose the only other thing to answer there is in terms of the statements, and that particular resident I've also had conversations with over the last couple of years, is that there is probably, it's prudent to wait until DIT have done their work in terms of the Swanport to the Mallee Highway work or scoping before I think we would come back to the chamber with some sort of proposal that either builds on the one that happened in 1718 or 1819, and I don't know which one it is, before we would come back with a proposal of any sort of entry statement, because it would have to be in conjunction with DIT, that particular part of it.
So can I respectfully request that resident is contacted, because I assume that they're not technologically literate and therefore possibly is in that sort of that big hall, which is residents that don't watch council meetings and residents which perhaps don't have online access. And given it's of concern to that person, that I just request that that information is relayed to them.
I will do that for you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Questions without notice, councillor Lang.
Thank you, councillor Taylor, to remind me, not directly related, but this afternoon I pulled off into the large car park at the southern end of town, and I'm glad I had a four-wheel drive. The holes and ruts are atrocious. It's the worst road I've ever driven on. I'm just wondering who's responsible for its upkeep. Because it needs a serious grader problem.
For you, Mayor. Check. We will take that as a issue to follow up, and we will raise the CRM, councillor.
Thank you.
We had the lay-by on the other side of
Other side of
Tintinara,
Tintinara.
which is a lake, the second lake in Tintinara now. In fact, the car got bogged there the other day,
So
which
councillors,
is also Dip Tyre's responsibility.
so there's been a long campaign to have puddle removed at the school bus stop at Kai, and last time I drove past, it still wasn't, despite a promise for the DITS contractors to do so. So we will go on campaigning, get a relationship with DIT. And whether that's, we continue to hope that they'll do the work that we think they should do, whether at some stage we can be paid to do the work we realistically think needs done, stop making our entrances to our towns look unnavigable.
For you, Mayor, we have on our list a email exchange with the Minister in terms of regional roads and also the CEO, so we're finding time to have a chat with her.
I'm still on questions without notice.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just through you, I'd like to ask the Director of Infrastructure and Asset, have the sorting out of the rubbish at the waste transfer stations, have the operators been advised of the council's decision on separating waste from recyclables?
For you, Mayor, I'll take that question on notice.
Okay, nothing else?
There's one other question. I was gobsmacked when I was looking at the council's website the other day, and we have a vacancy for community development and special projects officer. My question to the CEO was, this has an allowance been made in for this $70,000+ job or not? Because it's classified 5 in the classification 5 of the Municipal Officers Award, which is around about $70,000+ a year. By the time of the base salary of $62,768, with the on cost would be over $70,000. Firstly, was that allowed for in the budget this year? If so, why weren't we informed? And secondly, we seem to have these sort of officers. We've got already a special projects officer. We've got one of those. We've got a grants officer, although part-time. So maybe we could get a written explanation from you of why this officer is required.
Are you asking for a written explanation, or do you want me to, sorry, through you, Mayor, or do you want me to talk about it?
Sorry?
Do you want a written explanation, councillor, or would you like me to answer the question?
Oh, you can answer the question, yeah. That's fine.
First, it's a fixed term contract for 6 months. It has been budgeted for, and it's specifically to work with communities. We were getting, anxious is not the right word, but we were reading lots of information that said that coming out of COVID, many organisations across South Australia would be struggling with either reforming, getting volunteers back in place. So this is a fixed term contract that we've advertised for 6 months. It's not a full-time position, it's 12-month fixed term for 12 months. I am not expecting that we will get much interest at all in it. So really it's testing the market to see what's out there, but it's not intended to be a long-term position. It is to work specifically with communities coming out of COVID. And if we could find a grant for that, we would have, but there is no such thing. So it is really about council stepping up for those organisations that struggle with reforming or being resilient coming out of COVID.
My second question, as part of the first one, was that allowed for in the budget?
I answered at the beginning, yes, councillor, it is.
Why weren't we informed?
Because it's not a permanent position. It is really just.
It's an
it could be-
expense. The budget is the yearly, a detailed analysis of yearly expenses.
So it could have been a contract, and to me, it's a contract. I apologise if it wasn't brought to your attention. It's not intended to be a full-time one. And as I said, if we have somebody who comes even within, if we get more than one application, I'll be amazed. I don't think we'll ever have a position. And if we think about it, we do have two people who work in community development. They are full-time and they are full bottle at the moment.
Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Mayor, further to that, is this position expected to assist community groups with grant funding applications?
So through you, Mayor, we expect the position to do that full gamut of work that we just don't have the capacity to do, which is to help new executives coming in to make sure that they can be resilient in terms of understanding what their roles are of executives in sporting clubs, to assist them with grant applications, to facilitate their meetings with politicians and other, wherever grants are coming from. It really is a support position that we don't have one at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll move on. Item 6.1, the Mayor's report. Note there we have met with executives of the Education Department re school bus services. I suspect we'll have a meeting next week with industry body, Bus SA. I suspect it will require a change in departmental policy to try and get on top of this. Departmental officers simply following the policy would be the short answer. That has a pretty pernicious effect on some of our rural communities.
Further to that, Mayor, the question was around that particular item and what exactly are we as a district hoping would be the outcome of these meetings?
I'll have a go. Yep. I would hope that we can get some stability in bus routes, school buses, for Education Department buses in this district. So what happens when we fall below 10 children, and it appears in a very short time the department wants to rejig the routes, and that disrupts the whole sort of balance of the bus routes. Some parents are winners, some are losers out of that. Council then is told we've got to fix up a road or put another bus stop in. I've noticed this over the last 2 years. I would have mentioned before the issue at Kai, where the bus is pulling over on the edge of the bitumen in a puddle. That's safe, well, fair enough. I don't think it is. So we're trying to, I suppose, from an advocacy point of view, drive to get the department to basically, to a degree, stand by the bus routes that service most of the community most of the time. Give some surety to our parents that want to send their kids to our state schools in this area, 3 area schools and our, at this stage, only 1 primary school, that they will be able to rely on it. Because fortunately, if 1 or 2 families disappear for whatever reason all of a sudden, the whole bus route process quickly gets put into gear and changes bus routes, or can change them around a lot. And that seems to be a problem that the department is following the policy, no doubt, to control costs quite rigidly.
Thank you.
Councillor Roundtree, around this subject?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mayor. Will your meeting allow you the opportunity to talk about allowing kindergarten children to be considered? And also the amount of money that's paid to parents to do that travel has been incredibly low. And I know it's only meant to be just a token gesture, but it is low and it hasn't moved in line with inflation for years. And it probably needs to at least catch up. And I think what help our bus runs is if those kindy kids are also included.
Now, at this stage, the department's policy is not to have kindy kids counted. They're only if there's space So once again, once we complete this next meeting, I think we'll probably come to a view on a lobbying strategy alongside of at least our state parliamentary representative.
That's through you, Mayor. I think we know we've been hamstrung by their policy. And
Yeah.
really now we're at a point where we have to lobby to change that policy because it is no longer fit for purpose policy.
No, well, not in our eyes.
Not in our, well, not in
our eyes.
regional Australia. It's
Not in the very large broadacre parts of South Australia, at least.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Ling.
Thanks, Mr Chair. Just wondering if you could elaborate on the historical police memorial.
So we've met with some representatives along with the historians in this chamber from the Police Historical Society. There was a policeman that died trying to stop a horse and cart charging down the main street of this town
Oh, wow.
in 1870 something. The town was full of railway navvies, I think was the discussion. Never quite where we went with the navvies. And he was killed. And we understand he's buried at Wellington East. That's the understanding, it probably an unmarked. So the representatives of this association like to acknowledge police officer history every year, and I suppose it's about trying to come to the right site perhaps for something and that. And so I think our council staff, along with the historians and this particular group, will be working on that over the next few months. Councillor Bowman.
Just going on from that subject, if I may, Mr Mayor, is that, because I was going to ask that question, Councillor Lang myself, the historians also are going through the phases, also setting up a railway memorial as well in link with that as well. So, yeah.
One of the more unusual ones.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Thank you, Councillor Arthur. Any questions, Councillor Arthur? Are you going to add anything to your extensive report?
No, I've got no questions about it.
Right, well, someone else might. There is none. I'll move to Councillor Qualman. Yours, you want to add anything?
Nothing to add. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you, councillors, for that. Move to item 7, motions of notices of motion, sorry. We have nil motions without notice, councillors. You want to move that way, councillor? That be
Yes, please.
that my response to the questions taken on notice at the June meeting be recorded in the minutes. Is that
Thank you.
like? You were the seconder, I think, councillor. You want to lead debate, councillor?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Anyone else want to join debate? Okay, you closing?
Closed.
Second.
Councillor Lang. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried 5-3. Councillors voting for the motion are councillors. No. And tell me if I'm wrong. Councillors Arthur, Yench, Hill, Ling and Simmons voted for the motion. Councillors Bowman, Rountree and Taylor voted against. Bill carried. I am still on motions without notice, councillors. Being none, move to item 8, Office of the CEO report, ordinary councillor meetings commencement time. This is for the balance of the term of this councillor. I'll start with you, Councillor Qualman, then Councillor Rountree is what I saw.
Yeah, I'll move it.
You're moving the recommendation. Councillor Rountree, what do you?
I would like to move an amendment to the motion.
Well, let's just wait until we get a seconder first and foremost. You're a seconder to the recommendation. Councillor Qualman's moved it. Councillor Arthur, you're the seconder. You want to speak, Councillor Qualman, to the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just seems a not a bad time, like 5 o'clock, too late. And it's good time regarding the staff. I suppose, you know, they knock off at about 5 and they can come straight to the meeting, where any later there's a bit of a wait over time. So yeah, 5 o'clock and plus people knocking off. So yeah. Thank you.
I tend to agree. As you know, if the meeting starts at 6, we can, under the present conditions, go through to 9:30. And I'm probably being a bit selfish. That means I get home very, very late at night. And more so, it means I get home about the peak time of trucks on the Dukes Highway. So 5 o'clock would suit me better.
So council's code of practice says that the meetings can only go on after 9:30 with leave of the meeting.
Mm-hmm. Well, at the present moment, that is 9:30.
Yeah, that's
the
right.
meeting can only go till 9:30, where it'll be 8:30.
Yep. What I would, if I could just say, councillor, is in this recommendation, in terms of accepting deputations in particular, but we'd like to give them a time. It probably allows us to put it at around 6 o'clock for deputations. So that's allows people to finish work or finish school or whatever and not be too early, too late. That's perhaps one of the driving features of that time in terms of fitting in people we know will come and visit us, or we're asking them to commit to a time. It has been a problem sometimes if we're at 3 o'clock to sort of keep pushing back till 5 o'clock for a deputation. Anyone else speaking for or against that motion? I had Councillor, are you going to speak for or against this motion, or are you going to, Councillor?
I was going to speak against it, but
I
having-
have a foreshadowed amendment.
having listened to the two comments so far, I'm of a mind at the moment to be for the motion. I was concerned that we originally decided to move it to 6 p.m. because of the people who are working and their travel time. It is important to give the ratepayers as much access as possible. I don't believe always watching it retrospectively once they get home is necessarily really a good idea. I think they should have the opportunity to be able to watch it there and then. So keeping it to 6 p.m. Was my original ideal position. However, because essentially we're here for the ratepayers, we're not here for ourselves. So that was the original intent of having it at 6 p.m. However, on reflection, I'd be happy with it at 5 p.m.
Thank you. I would note that today is most unusual. It's about the first time I can recall we haven't had a workshop prior to a council meeting. So, a little bit strange. Councillor Rountree, you did foreshadow.
Yep. And just listening to what Councillor Arthur said and now Councillor Taylor as well, I was of the same opinion. I was going to say a similar thing to what Councillor Taylor said, that we had originally said that we'd start at 6 p.m. to give people that are working the opportunity to get here. But if we can look at locking in a specific time for the deputations, that'd help sort of give the ratepayers who do want to attend a time. So I think I'll hold off for my amendment at the moment, listening to what the others had to say. And I would support the
Councillor
motion.
Yench.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was hoping that the amendment would come, but I would like to move one, and that the time be moved back to 4 o'clock. I'll wait for.
Is there a seconder?
I have a seconder. Yep.
Councillor Lang is the seconder. You may speak, Councillor Yench.
Thank
yes.
you. The reason for 4 o'clock, I acknowledge my council colleagues' comments, but since when we initially did the 6 o'clock, it was when we weren't recording and there wasn't live meetings going out. We do have now a time of the year where, as has been pointed out, the roads, the trucks tend to be fairly heavy, particularly from here to Tinty. I have grave concerns in regards duty of care, for councillors, obviously, who are travelling potentially at night and at an hour which is not good. Also for staff who have to travel and stay back but also for the ratepayer, the residents who may like to attend. I think 4 o'clock is a reasonable compromise because it allows us to have either workshops or presentations from other organisations that may find or will find that are more suitable to present to council. But I do think that we are putting people at risk, particularly at this time of the year, putting them on the road at 5:30, 6 or 8, 9 o'clock at night when the meetings have finished. And that is when the greater risk occurs. So I believe 4 o'clock is a better compromise. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Lang, you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I concur with comments made by all, actually. Yes, we did set the time for 6 o'clock prior to us going to the elaborate video audio conferencing, which has been great. I know a lot of constituents, not just ratepayers, constituents who actually watch this from home. I think 4 o'clock is a good compromise. We can get a lot of business out of the way during normal working hours, staff, etc., and have deputations and public question time perhaps at the end of the meeting, which might stretch into around the 6 o'clock mark. So I think 4 o'clock is a good compromise.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak, which is only Councillor Hill, actually? You'll close, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In closing, the fact that 6 o'clock we're here, nobody else is. I think that aptly demonstrates that the public are finding the weather and the timing unfortunate. Yes, there is complications with people who wish to present to council if we are too early in the day. I acknowledge that, but I do believe 4 o'clock is a reasonable compromise, which would allow, because our meetings generally go for up to 2 hours, would allow for people to get here if that is what they require. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, the amendment is that the ordinary meetings will commence at 4 p.m. Those in favour? Those against? The amendment is lost, with Councillors Ling and Yench voting for the amendment and the other six councillors against the amendment. The amendment has become, the amendment is lost. The motion remains. Is there no further amendment? Is there any further debate around the motion? You get to close, Councillor.
I'll close. Thank you.
Thank you
Mr.
for that.
Mayor.
Very kind. So the motion is that the ordinary council meetings, which are held on the third Tuesday of each month at the Coorong Civic Centre Chambers, will be commenced at 5 p.m. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried with 7 councillors voting for it and Councillor Yench voting against that motion. Thank you, councillors. Number 2, Local Government Association Roads and Works Conference. We would note, councillors, that it is at Murray Bridge. So we should be able to make it that far, perhaps. Councillor Roundtree.
Yeah, I was going to, with the recommendation, I'd like to move the recommendation, but where the blank bit is, just put in the mayor and his delegate. So it would read that the council endorse the attendance, the mayor and his delegate, so losing my voice, at the 2022 LGA Roads and Works Conference in Murray Bridge.
We want a bit of definition of his delegate, please.
Yeah.
Well, Just yourself then, Mayor?
Uh,
I would have, so the staff members already are going, like, the director would already be attending?
no, they're right at the staff.
Okay, then I think it just should be.
Councillor, if you would ask me who I would delegate,
Well,
I would be delegating the deputy mayor because he's.
well, that's what I
chairman
was
of
going to say, you and the
Committee.
deputy
I
mayor,
agree.
So if that's what you wish to,
mayor or his delegate.
I could just speak briefly. Some of these conferences are more, how I'll put it politely, more interesting than others. Thank you for that. And given the importance of roads to this council and given the importance of particularly the special local roads program to this council in the next few years, I feel probably more than the mayor needs to go to at least this function. That's my thoughts for what it's worth. So I'm with the mayor and the deputy mayor, I think, in the motion, but Councillor Taylor,
Do I need to amend that, Mayor, to the mayor and deputy mayor?
with the
I'm happy with that.
just a variation, yeah. So Councillor Crowntree's moved that the mayor and the deputy mayor be the two councillors that attend.
I'll second that.
Councillor Taylor is the seconder of that. Is there any debate, councillors? Councillor Yench.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Previously, councillors Bland and Corman Roundtree were able to attend. And it is valid because they are all committee people and involved in this area. I believe that opportunity should be given to each of those to either say yes or decline.
So councillors, you're saying yes, councillor Coleman?
Yes.
You'd like to attend?
I like those conferences. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Roundtree,
No, I'm fine. I think leave it to those more experienced.
and Councillor Bland, we don't know if she'll be back, will we? Probably could be.
If you say and your delegates or nominees.
Yeah. All right. So how do you want to word? Are you happy to change?
I am. I'm happy to add in councillor Coleman if he wants to go. That's fine. No one should be deprived.
So if you want to put Councillor Bland in, she could. If she doesn't want to go, she
She
doesn't.
doesn't want to go. She doesn't want to go.
Just
Yep, that's
councillors.
fine.
Councillor Bland's on four.
I'm happy to pull
4
my
weeks
name
leave.
out, save some money.
Right, Councillor Bland. If she wants to. Note that I don't know if I'll attend the entire program either. Looks to be a reasonable amount of socialising there. Councillor Arthur.
Mr Mayor, in a previous life, these sort of things were brought up and it was moved that whoever went plus the staff was up to the chamber. Now, I believe, I don't know if he will be going, but the Director of Infrastructure and Assets definitely should be going to this show.
For you, Mayor, don't assume he's not. He's definitely going.
May still have some friends in that town.
Yeah. Well, it has been up until recently that it's always gone through the council that who goes to these conferences.
Not staff.
Because I remember we took, when we went to Mount Gambier, we took 3 other just workmen with us.
The staff,
It was a disaster.
long time ago, councillor, you and me might have been around then. There was more I wouldn't call it a conference, I'd call it a boys' toys day. But we did take a lot of it, the outside staff. I don't know if they exist anymore. I'm looking at the director. But I think that would be more pertinent than that. Staff going to these conferences is a different issue. It's not our purview in this chamber.
I'm just saying that
I
it
know,
used to go
I know.
through our minutes.
We don't just appear to have
Renmark.
those field days.
Port Lincoln,
This stage, the motion is that 4 councillors be authorised to attend. Any further amendment change? Councillor Taylor wants to say something.
Through you, Matt. I mean, it's at what point do we put a cap on these things?
Well, I suppose there is a cost, councillor, but yeah,
It is cost, Matt, and the Isn't it overkill to have 4 councillors at this stage of the term?
If we were going to the Gold Coast councillor or something like that, I might agree with you. But
It's still a cost per delegate.
yeah, I appreciate that part, but and I'd note, as usual, we're still not sure exactly when the conference costs are and everything. Has it come through yet?
Or 75.
Yeah, that was based on the last one. I take on board what you're saying, councillor, but I would see this as a matter of regional support, councillor.
It is, no, I just answer that. It is a very good conference. I think it's probably one of the best conferences you go through to the local government. It's better than your twice annual general meetings or whatever they call them in Adelaide, because it actually gets down to nitty gritty, and it also has a hell of a lot of exhibitors there and looking at new ideas. And I've gone to a few of them now as the chair of the Infrastructure and Assets Committee, but it has been very informative.
The councillors at one I attended recently at Renmarks and presenters presented from a near Adelaide council, and they gave a presentation on their management of unsealed road network, and was it 20 or 50 kilometres of road they had to manage, councillor, you remember? Yeah. And one of the large rural councils asked the first question, and it was to them, they said, what did they do after lunch Monday? So there is some humour there. I'm taking it you're staying as the seconder of the motion as it is, just to take 4 councillors to Maybridge.
The motion is before me. I don't have to vote for it.
No, I know, but I haven't withdrawn your seconding. Okay, any other debate? Come on. Councillor Coleman, going to, you won't close.
If I may say, Mr Mayor, I totally understand where Councillor Taylor's coming from. She's right. But having said that, I feel I should go because I sit on the Infrastructure and Assets Committee, and we went to that one at up Houndorf, and that was very informative, and I think I should go to this one to help me do the role in infrastructure and asset work. I appreciate it.
Okay.
And it's only a day and a half.
Councillor Roundtree, you better close.
I'll close.
Oh, sorry, Mr Mayor, could we just check with Councillor Blair whether Councillor Bland will be available?
Well,
Because otherwise you're going to pay $455 and you do it. You don't get no refunds.
For you, Mayor, we wouldn't do that.
I'm going to put the motion as it is on the screen. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Matt.
Just through you, Mayor, I just got some information on the website. So there's a welcome reception on the Wednesday night, which we wouldn't have to go to. There's also a conference session, which is on the Thursday between 9 and 5. And there's a stand-up networking dinner from 5:30 to 7:30. So it is a reduced conference to what they have been previously. There has been multiple days and multiple functions.
Yeah.
So it's more of an industry focus rather than a networking focus.
Thank you, councillors. I move to item 3, Murray-Darling Association National Conference. Councillors, I'd note that the date of this conference unfortunately falls over the September Ordinary Council meeting, Tuesday the 20th of September. And at this stage, CEO as council's voting delegate, I think, it would still go to Albury. She can Zoom, I think, under the rules at the moment.
We're checking that, Mayor.
Because we are checking that. I just note that, councillors, you want to give some consideration. Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Mayor, that is just confirmation that the CEO would be in attendance. That was my question. In one form or another.
Region 6 executives.
Yes.
Is there any? I'll start over there then, Councillor Lang second.
I am happy to move the recommendation, point 2. Do we need to send councillors to this event, or can we just send the CEO as our voting delegate? Because I would like to just move that the CEO be appointed the voting delegate and that she attend this event.
I'll second that.
Not worry about sending any councillors at this point, as it's only punctuary. It's not really doing anything.
So move Councillor Roundtree, seconded Councillor Taylor, only point 2. Councillor Taylor, do you want to speak as the seconder?
Yes, I will. And the cost of this is substantial. The timing is quite difficult, as you say. It's over a council meeting. The CEO is the appropriate person to send. We don't need to send councillors. It's right at the end of effectively the 4th year of our term. And I don't see that it's of benefit to the ratepayers to send anyone other than the CEO.
Okay, Councillor Ling indicated, but he got cut off. But anyway, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't wish ill health on our CEO and wish her well on the trip. But if she does fall ill, we won't have a vote. We always send at least one other as a backup, a spare, you might say. And we need a spare.
Mr Mayor, could I just ask one question? Has the voting procedure changed? Because it was the region that had the vote before, not the individual council members of the region. So has that changed?
Never changed.
Sorry?
Never changed. It's always.
So it's the region that votes, not the individual?
No. Every member council or every individual has a vote based on the number of head of population. For us, it's only 1. Murray Bridge is 3. Alexandra is 3 because of their population.
Well, it has changed since I went to them.
It's been a long, long time ago because that's always stood from the previous constitution and it's in the current constitution.
So, CEO, sorry.
Through you, Mayor. One of the things with the MDA is not quite that I wish ill health on myself, but I've also, Tracy Strugnell is also a proxy for some of the meetings for me with this one. So depending on when the agenda comes out, I was going to see if she would also be available. So that may alleviate your concerns, but it's up to the Mayor and the Chamber about councillors and they going. But from a staff perspective, I haven't asked Tracy, she's on holidays, but I was going to ask her to come because she's starting to stand in as a proxy for some things.
Sorry, who are you talking about?
Tracy Strugnell.
Sorry, yes.
So you might want to amend the appoint the Chief Executive Officer or her
Delegate, yeah.
or her delegate. That might be to satisfy that process. Got a question, Councillor Taylor?
With respect, Mayor, and or?
Yeah. Certainly. Any further debate, councillors? The motion is that we appoint the Chief Executive Officer and or her delegate as council's voting delegate at the 2020 Murray-Darling Association Annual General Meeting. Councillor Roundtree, you close.
I'll close.
Thank you. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Nine, 9.1, I think we're up to. Construction of unmade road reserve policy. There is a recommendation that council adopt the construction of unmade road reserve policy as tabled. Is there anyone prepared to move? I'm going to go with Councillor Ling and Councillor Roundtree on this one, please. Councillor Ling.
Nothing to say at this stage.
Do you want to add?
I'll just thank the director for making that preamble much clearer. I think it sets a tone for the whole document and it was really good.
Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Matt, to the director. Regarding the point, council be indemnified from providing vehicular access driveways from a road to a property boundary. Can I just have that fully explained, ratepayers?
That talks to the piece of road between the back of curb and the property boundary. So a driveway, for example, or a unsealed driveway in a rural situation from the carriageway to the fence line. Ultimately, the driveway is only there to serve the access to the property. So it's the responsibility of the property owner to keep that at a suitable standard or construct it in the first place. Otherwise, council would be responsible for every driveway in its district.
Thank you. I'm just thinking of recent activity on Tiller Street, where perhaps your communications to us have been clear and concise as to issues and possible rectifications. I'm just thinking that might not be explicitly clear in this document with a clause like that, which is to indemnify council effectively from not having to maintain that driveway because it perhaps isn't recognised as a driveway in the first place, and we end up with the curbing situation, which I appreciate is for rectification by yourself and your team. I just wanted to query that publicly.
When we're undertaking construction or renewal of an existing curb, we're going to have it as a standard process that a driveway crossover is provided to all properties, irrespective of what the construction of the private driveway is made from. So if we have to replace a curb in front of an existing property, we'll provide access across that curb by a driveway crossover within the curb line. So if the driveway isn't constructed, from the back of the curb or the concrete would remain as is, but we would make good if we're required to change grades or levels to install the curb. So for example, if a driveway is needed to be cut out or the curb line changes alignment or height, as council are doing work, it would be our responsibility then to make the existing driveway good or fit for purpose for access. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much.
Councillor Ling.
Just for clarification, but that to the director, that's got nothing to do with this particular motion though, does it? Which is about unmade road reserves.
Through the chair, it doesn't, but I guess it's really a really good point that Councillor Taylor has made, that has to be part of our ongoing process for curb renewal, whether that needs to be in a policy or whether it needs to be just in our standard levels of service when we're doing particular works. When we're dictating or when we're instigating the work, we can't disadvantage the public by doing that work. We need to make sure it's either as good or better than when we started.
Anyone else? Regardless to the recommendation, which as it reads.
Close.
Councillor Ling, thank you. Closing. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 2, safe environments, children and other vulnerable people policy review. There's a recommendation. Councillor Taylor, you moving the recommendation?
I'll move that way.
You. Is there a seconder? Councillor Roundtree. Councillor Taylor, you want to speak?
No.
No. Councillor Roundtree, you
I
want
have
to?
a question.
Got a question?
So in 6.6, which is page 7 of 11, it talks about vulnerable people, but yeah, it talks about vulnerable people. We also reference in there a young person, and then in the definition it says that a young person is a person under 18, which to me encompasses a young person. But we're not mentioning in that area the other vulnerable people, such as the elderly and disabled, because we're not that section not for that group.
This is specifically for vulnerable young people.
6.6 is, but the whole document is for young people and vulnerable.
And vulnerable.
But we don't talk about those vulnerable people being, say, the elderly or disabled, in that particular clause, we say basically young people twice by calling them children and young people. I'm just wondering if it was a wording issue or if I missed what that's supposed to mean. Because where do you report elder abuse or abuse of a disabled person? You know, we talk about the children and the Carl reporting. It just struck me when I was reading it. It's a little bit ambiguous there.
So if you read, through you, Mayor, if you read it in conjunction with the scope, which is number 2, does that clarify your thoughts?
Scope, yeah, so
Yes.
yes, that's where I got some of that information from. But see how it says 6.6, it refers to them as youth and or children and young people. It leaves out that vulnerable persons group, which I think is what that scope picks up. It just doesn't mention that in that particular section.
If you read the sentence before, it says mandated notifiers. So is mandated notifiers only apply to children, or does it apply to other people as well? Because that's really what the sentence is saying. It's mandated.
That's correct, because that's then also confusing. Are we meant to be notifying of disabled abuse and elder abuse if we see it, or only children?
My understanding, and Miles would correct me if I'm wrong, but this policy relates to the mandatory reporting for young children, young people and children. I think that there is an opportunity.
Why does it include the scope? Does it say aged and frail?
I don't think it's mandatory for those groups, but
Okay, I was really
we
confused.
passed this through the state.
Yeah.
We could go back again and have another look at it, but the state are happy with this document.
Are they?
Yeah,
Okay.
because they were the ones who picked up it's exactly the same that came to council a couple of meetings ago, and then they weren't happy with how we had described staff who had mandatory responsibilities. I can, out of session, if you're happy, I will get some clarity, but my understanding is, unless South Australia is different, the mandatory reporting is around children and young people. And the others are that they're vulnerable, and there may be a case that you have to report, but I'm not 100% certain that it's not mandatory.
Okay, that's surprising.
But I will check, and if you're happy, councillor, the state are happy with this document, I will send out a session, some clarification.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy with that.
Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Mayor, thank you. Is the problem in the title of the document, which is children and other vulnerable people policy, where we've got definition which conflicts with the definition, which is children and young people. So is it the other vulnerable people?
Can I just, Ben, through you, Mayor, do you have some helpful words around this?
Come up to the mic, Ben, please. That one probably works.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. I think you're right, Bridget. It's a model document that if we ran an aged care home or something of that nature, that would apply more. Is it a title for title's sake? It shouldn't be, but in this case, I think you're right, Bridget. I think it's slipped past the state side and they've gone, yeah, tick, basically. So we can check, but for the fact that we don't have an aged care home, we don't run immunisation clinics for elderly, we don't do services in that regard, we're exempt.
I will get some clarity,
Yeah.
but because I just read the purpose again, and it is much more broad than young people. But I think there is some relationship to the fact that we don't run those facilities where there is some mandatory reporting as well, but I will get clarification.
Maybe that's all it needs, is that statement that because we focus on this or something like that. But
Yeah.
okay, I'm happy to go ahead with it. I think you'll sort it out.
Anyone else? Being no one, Councillor Taylor, you at the close.
Through you, Mayor. So are we leaving it as is or waiting for clarification, confirmation, changes, advice?
Second is probably happy to go with any minor tweaking to be dealt with later. You're the mover.
Okay,
Okay, what?
so because what we're voting on is this policy as is included in the document.
Given the
So
discussion, I would say we would have the ability to just,
If,
words I'm trying to think
if
of.
it any help, councillors, if you look at page 3 of 11 under the definitions, the mandatory reporting only relates to children or young people. And I think Ben's right, the mandatory reporting, if it comes into those other categories or those other acts, as if you actually, like the Aged Care Act, if we were to actually be running a nursing home or facility for older Australians, we would have some mandatory and legislative responsibility. But we don't have any of those expected to have mandatory reporting as it is in the definition. But again, I will make sure that my interpretation of that is correct.
I appreciate what you're saying. However, is the problem then in the title, which should be children and other vulnerable young people?
I would have to say, councillor, it is probably not our title, it's the state's title. And generally we wouldn't have this policy, but the state expects that we do. So we would fall in line with the title. I can write and tell them that it's confusing, but it's something that's probably standard across the whole state.
Interesting.
It is interesting because to me, when I looked at this and read it in the sense of elders or elderly people, if you were out at, say, at an event and you happen to witness elder abuse and you're a mandatory reporter, to me, this says you have to do something. But what you're saying is because we don't run a home, we don't have to do something.
My expectation is that anybody in the community would report that to the police.
Okay, so you just,
Any Tom, Dick and Harry down the street now is compulsory.
yeah, all right.
Can I come back to Councillor Taylor? Is she happy to go with the motion as it is, because she's the mover? She'll be effectively closing.
I'll close.
Okay. The motion is that council adopt the Safe Environments, Children and Other Vulnerable People policy as amended. Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Number 3, rating policy review.
I'll move that way, Mr Mayor.
A second.
Councillor Arthur and Councillor Roundtree, the voices I've heard. To speak, councillors?
I don't think there's anything unforeseen in there. It is just a change back from
Change back.
COVID, really.
Anyone else wish to speak for or against? Being none, you're closing, councillor. We'll take it as yes. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 4, revocation of informal gatherings policy.
I'll move that way too, Mr Mayor.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Some common sense for a change. That's my comment.
Councillor Arthur moves, Councillor Taylor seconds that council revoke the informal gatherings policy. Does anyone else wish to speak for or against it? Councillor Taylor, you are the seconder, but yes, go away.
This
Go
is-
on, sorry.
This is an interesting document. I mean, given the, it was always confusing to appreciate what informal gathering was anyway. But given, you know, people travel in cars together, people have meetings on the runs together. So I just see it as common sense.
Right. Okay. Closing.
Both.
I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously as well. Number 5, revocation of equal opportunity discrimination, harassment and bullying policy. Someone move that way, please, if they're happy to. Councillor Roundtree, you're moving. For a seconder. Councillor Hill, thank you. Councillor Roundtree, you want to speak to it?
No, it's pretty clear cut.
Councillor Hill, you want to add anything? Thank you. Is there anyone else wish to speak for or against the recommendation, which is the
Well,
motion?
Can I just ask one question, Mr Mayor, regarding
question.
because the minutes, 060622, the Coorong District Council did not offer and were not asked to leave the meeting for a private and frank discussion between the members, and the decision was made to continue as a Section 41 committee under council. Yet the motion is to get rid of them as a Section
You're
41
on the
committee.
wrong
Where were you?
subject, councillor. I have actually read this one.
Oh, God, I've done it again. Done it again. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Too late in
My
the evening.
apologies. My apologies, Mr Mayor
Bedtime.
and elected members.
It's becoming one of your habits, councillor.
I do. Flick too quick.
Goes with dementia.
So there's no further debate on this one. Councillor Roundtree, you're closing? Yeah. So that is that the council revoke the equal opportunity discrimination, harassment and bullying policy. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously again. Number 10. Is Section 41 committees and Section 43 subsidiaries. Number 1, an Alpine Community Hall Committee minutes of the meeting of the 6th of June. Councillor Taylor and Yench are the, I presume, mover and seconder of the recommendation I'm going to take. Yes. Councillor Taylor, you want to speak?
No, thank you.
Councillor Yench.
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Arthur, I think we're now on the one.
Yeah,
that you
well,
want.
I'm sort of a bit confused here because it says that we're going, council administration been in hand, council dissolved to move to dissolve the Canalpin Hall community, yet in their minutes they said they don't want to go. So what is the story? Are they going, staying or what?
They've gone.
And Miles is also a way to get some clarification on that, Mayor, but our understanding is that the minutes doesn't reflect the conversation, but Councillor Roundtree was in the room, so she may have some light to shed on.
So they had a very good presentation from council. I had a lot of questions. And Miles certainly did a really good job of allaying their fears. Their main concern with not being a Section 41 is how would they keep track of all the things that the hall needed. So Miles was able to explain to them that the hall belongs to the council, that repairs and maintenance and all those things can still be brought up with council through the CRM process. They were happy with that, but they didn't want to be the ones that actually made the call themselves. Not all of their committee was there. They didn't want to just have a few that were in the room at the time make the call, so they left it with council to make the decision for them. But if they wanted it reflected that they just didn't want anything to change, but they're also happy to work with the new. I think that they will move through this quite well, as long as they've got some understanding that their concerns will still be heard.
So my next question is the council meeting of the, where is it, the 22nd or 21st of June, that the committee be folded, as that stands? Okay, that's all I want to know, because it's not clear in here.
Well, the minutes were also written before that meeting. I think the 6th of June or something, so they were written before that. So
Yeah,
they would be aware of the June decision.
it was a little bit ambiguous, that's all. So thank you.
Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just a matter of interest, if the 41 committee is being dissolved, will we continue getting minutes? Because it is interesting to know what's going on at the hall as a councillor.
There's no requirements for minutes.
Is there a possibility of it?
It would be up to the loose collection of people who are no longer a committee to decide if they wanted to do that or not.
I think what their intention will be is to keep notes of, they'll still probably get together and they'll make some notes about things for their own purposes about what needs to be done, but that'll be more to communicate with the CEO and council about things that they need, more so than to keep the councillors informed. I will still be on that committee, and whoever's in term next will be invited to be part of the, they want to keep someone from council on having meetings with them.
Okay.
Councillor Taylor, you'll close.
I'll close.
Thank you. It's just we received the minutes, I think, so I'm trying to find them. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. Murray Lands and Riverland Local Government Association minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of May. Councillor Yench, you moving?
Yes, I'll move 1 and 2, please.
1 and 2, yes, the recommendation. Is there a seconder, Councillor Taylor?
Yep.
Seconder. And thank you. Is there anyone you want to speak, councillor?
No, thank you.
I would indicate from this subject that would have invited the new executive officer of the region and for Karen McLeod to speak if she gets the opportunity in the next couple, 3 months. Any other discussion, councillors, debate?
Just one question, Mr. Mayor, regarding just interested on the Little Corella management. How are they going with that? It's everything stood by the marked time while the election was on, and landscape board and the natural resources board, or the landscape board is a
Landscape
natural
board's now.
resources board now. But like how are they going? Are we going to have reserves for like I think was it Manham Council's declared sanctuaries for them?
Sanctuaries.
Yeah, the sanctuary area. I don't know where they're going to put the signs up to keep them in, but
If we needed to, we'd bring it to council, councillor. That particular subject sort of falls within the ambit of the landscape boards and us, and no one else appears to want to help us
okay.
in any legislative sense. There's 3 or 4 subjects. Motorcycles on bush roads. There's another one. They're ongoing, councillor.
In this day and age, no one's game to put up a sensible proposal, cracking whips and that sort of stuff. In other words,
Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay. Closing, councillor.
Yes.
Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Councillors, can we just have a 5-minute break, please? With the lead of the meeting. And I'd be reminded there will be 5 minutes. Back at 7:25, please. 5.5 minutes. That was just too far away, too long. As we resume at 7:20. Number 11, community and corporate report. Item 1, audit and risk committee, appointment of council members. Councillor Yench.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to recommend councillors Roundtree and Bland.
You are moving that way.
Yes.
I'll second that.
So, Councillor Roundtree, do you want to be on this committee?
No, I don't, thanks, Mayor. I would like to move an amendment.
Hang on, does anyone know whether Councillor Bland is happy to be on this committee?
Through you.
Take that as a yes.
Through you, Mayor. Here, doesn't she? We can appoint people.
We, in my view, we could appoint. I decline, but I'll take Bill said as I don't think they need to be here. But I've got a councillor that's declined, so motion is sort of councillor. Is there any other councillor wishes to be the other council member? Councillor Taylor,
Yes,
you wish to be the other council member?
I don't see anybody else rushing for the gate.
So councillors Yench and Lang, are you happy for Councillor Taylor to be the other council member?
Absolutely.
I was going to nominate the deputy.
Yes, same here.
The deputy what?
Deputy
Councillor
Mayor.
Arthur.
Councillor Arthur.
I've got the mover happy with Councillor Taylor. Is the seconder happy with that or?
No.
I think we need to have an amendment because I've declined that motion. So I would like to move an amendment, please. Otherwise it goes to vote.
If you would like an election, we have provisions for it.
Well, I was going to nominate Councillor Arthur and Councillor Taylor to do it. So now we've got another name to add up there. We've got two more names to add up there. That'd be take mine off and add in Councillor Arthur and Councillor Taylor.
Well, you can do that.
I can do what, sorry?
You can move an amendment.
Well, I'd like to move an amendment and the two names that I would put forward would be Councillor Arthur and Councillor Taylor.
So Councillor Qualman, are you indicating a seconding of this motion?
I'd second that amendment.
All right, thank you. So Councillor Roundtree, you want to speak to your amendment?
No, I just said I think that we probably we've only got the space for two and I know both of them would be interested in doing it. So I thought, and they're here in the room, I want to put them forward as the two to fill those two vacancies.
Not me.
Councillor Arthur, I hope you're aware
No,
that you're
right.
about to be put on the committee if this was.
I've been on that before and I reckon it's a waste of time. Thank you.
No, it's not a waste of time, but
6 years ago.
So he's declined as well.
he has declined as well, which leaves me to get more interesting. As I've got a motion with one of the two councillors declining before we get to a vote. Councillor Taylor,
I'll accept, but I would like, is it an amendment to an amendment or what?
tell me what you want.
I am Councillor Qualman. Councillor Qualman hasn't had a go at it. Councillor Qualman and myself.
So Councillor Roundtree, are you happy that Councillor Qualman instead of Councillor Arthur?
He's happy to accept it, yes.
Councillor Qualman, even though you're the seconder, I think we could still take this. Are you happy to be the second? Yeah, I might point out that this is a committee up until probably only one meeting, but to me, until council election day. Might help this out a bit.
Well, I think I should help out and And I've never been on this committee before, so yeah, I'll put my hand up. Thank you.
I think there'll only be one meeting, just looking at that. So with the mover, the seconder of the amendment are both happy for Councillor Coleman and Taylor to be the two names in the thing, and they're with the entire motion. Anyone else wish to speak for or against that amendment? Councillor Ranch, you'll close.
Closed.
I will put the amendment. The amendment is, as it reads, with the two councillors being Councillors Taylor and Coleman. All those in favour? Those against? The amendment is carried with Councillors Lang, Hill and Yench against the amendment. Councillors Coleman, Taylor, Rountree, Arthur and Simmons for it, so it remains carried. The amendment becomes the motion, councillors. Is there any further amendments? By me. There is none. Put the motion as it is now. All those in favour? Those against? Carried with the same councillors voting for the motion and the same three councillors, Councillors Lang, Hill and Yench voting against the motion, remains carried. So what that means, councillors, is that Councillors Coleman and Taylor will be our two members on the audit committee till the council election. Thank you. Revised terms of reference, item 2 of the Coorong Assessment Panel. There's a recommendation that council adopts the revised Coorong Assessment Panel terms of reference as amended there, councillors. Someone move that way, please. Councillor Taylor and then Lang. I'm taking as mover and the seconder. Any debate, councillors? No. I'll then put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Coorong Assessment Panel sitting fees, councillors. There's a recommendation there. Someone move that way, please. Councillor Arthur. Is there a seconder? Councillor Coleman. Yes, that'd be fine. This doesn't affect you at all. No, thank you. Just checking because while you're council's delegate at the moment, you don't receive any fee for this. Any debate around that recommendation, which is the presiding member gets $550 inclusive of all costs, and independent members would be receiving $350 inclusive of all costs. The independent Coorong Assessment Panel members. Any debate? Any further debate? Closed. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Infrastructure and assets. There's nothing there to do. Councillor Coleman.
Mr. Mayor, this is the second time in a row. I'm a bit mystified. I would have thought there'd be something. Infrastructure and assets is about half of our expenditure.
Only it was, councillor.
Is it going that smooth, Director? No problems or what?
I've got to take this as a comment at this stage. Councillor, you're aware there's most projects are at this stage travelling all right, and there's some that are giving us great concern. And I think we've got an infrastructure and assets committee meeting coming up in a couple of 3 weeks, and I think there will be some substantial reports to the August meeting around some issues, because as you would be aware, by September we're in caretaker mode.
And if I may say, there's quite a comprehensive report in the information document, which I appreciate.
Yes. Okay. I'll take that as a comment.
Thank you.
I have no petitions. I have no deputations. Ashley, we have no questions written back there. So just for everyone's benefit, now that the public health emergency declaration has been lifted, Council has reverted back to standard meeting procedures, which include normal provisions for public question time, and that's included in Appendix 1 of the Code of Practice for proceedings of Council and committee meetings. Questions can be submitted in writing at the start of the meeting, and individuals are invited up to the front of the chamber to read out their questions. If we're unable to respond to a question, it will be taken on notice. So, councillors, we've had a good read of the provisions of our procedure, and we really cannot do it as we would have when we were in the emergency provisions of taking questions from the public written in, as in you need to come here and write them in. I don't know that I'd insist that someone stands in the front of the room, but
Through you, Mayor, why is that? So why do we have to have them actually come and present so they can't send them in anymore?
because that was only during the emergency.
We can't allow that anyway?
We'd have to amend our procedures, councillor, given how close it is to a new council debate, how useful that'd be.
Yeah, that's
At any stage, ratepayers, councillors are invited to submit questions to the executive or to the mayor even.
Ash just said during the caretaker period, we won't accept questions from the public either. So really, there's only one more meeting where we've reverted back to pre-COVID conditions.
Okay.
Councillors, information document I'm up to. Councillor Taylor, then Councillor Qualman.
Couple of questions, Mayor. It states in here about the Wellington East Reserve. So having been down there quite a few times recently, it's really looking very good and exceptional. When it comes to the other two stages, are the other two stages finalised in their design, and have they been costed already?
The short answer is no, through you, Mayor. Remember, we had an overall design that we had to change because of funding. The only way that the second stages will happen is if we go back for a grant, and we haven't done that yet. So we would need another design because it would have to be a standalone one, not one that.
So through you, Mayor, if they haven't been fully designed and they haven't been fully costed, as you especially are sort of pushing towards shovel ready in order to obtain grant funding, is that on the cards for this year? Or are we
back on that strategic list that we have? Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the second one was on the grading, the kilometres of roads graded. I read this with interest only because my own lane is on it, and whilst it might seem inconsequential, the kilometres listed, it lists a kilometre. So I know personally that the actual lane is only 320 metres. So I was just curious as to the rounding going on there, because there'd be a substantial difference with a kilometre of road base and 300 metres of road base. And I just want to query the actual accounting for the actual length of the roads being done.
Through you, Mayor, that's the second time that question has come up. So we will check with staff about how they actually measure. We're not, and this is me, probably Matt might have another answer, but we're not sure if they measure from point to point or how much road base they've actually used to assume that it's covered a particular, but we will check that answer. Matt, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, I didn't pick up, but yeah, that's clearly not correct.
So my concern to the CEO and to the director is, of course, that in listing it like that, are we paying, if it was subcontracted, for example, are we paying for whatever else the road length is on all other roads? Because if the rounding is significantly out like that, then there's a saving to be made.
If we were going to contract out patrol grading work, we wouldn't do it by kilometre. That that would encourage a contractor to do more at a lower quality potentially. So we would have to think about how we would contract it out. All of our patrol grading work is done. Patrol grading is done by our own staff. Resheeting is contracted out, which we do by the amount of work they put down on the ground. But with regard to the kilometres that are recorded here, that will be something, rest assured.
Thank you.
Okay, councillor Kwong and then councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Page 4, Paikuma Road upgrade, and it's costing, it says yellow, which means requires attention. Budget estimate was developed and using square metre rates from similar projects such as Coldie Road project. Did we have, Mr Mayor or Director, do we have problem asserting how much area we had to work on to work our costs out? The formula?
Do we have trouble asserting the square metres, I suppose is the question.
Mayor, it's not a question of square metres or the amount of work involved. It's a timing from when we use Coldie Road as an example to lodge our application with SLURP at a square metre rate, which is now no longer relevant because of the significant amount of inflation, through general inflation, as well as the construction industry inflation, which is significantly higher than standard inflation. The cost of doing work 18 months ago when the submission was lodged compared to where the submission is now is there is variance, absolutely.
As I indicated, councillor, I'd say in the next meeting there'll be a fairly broad discussion around the projects that have gone into a higher cost basis.
And just to finish off with that same question, then bottom of quality with yellow again is we're unable to obtain suitable rubber and sourcing from somewhere else of a lot better quality. Is that going to have a financial implication also?
Through you, Mayor, that will remain a risk on our, from a project point of view, forever and a day. Sourcing quality material in the right location for our resheeting is something that we're always going to have on the top of our radar as a risk. We are in the process of finding as many, I guess, borrow pits, rubble pits in as many locations as conveniently located across the district. We had a meeting this afternoon with the construction team. We have a list of half a dozen potential locations that we're going to investigate for the future. Well, this 2022-23 program as well as future programs. Probably need in the order of 150,000 tonne a year.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Lang.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Go back to Wellington East Reserve. I was quite surprised actually with the photographs and the developments taking place there. So I have to get down there and have a good look at it. But it raises, some time ago I submitted information and suggestion regard to the naming of the park after the Muckery family, who were one of the first 4 Aboriginal families that settled in the area on freehold land. And Mr Muckery was quite well known, has quite a history as being a gun shearer right up and down the river. There's a lot involved with they were anglicised as McRae family, but the proper name is Muckery. And I had proposed Muckery Park being the name of the reserve. Are we going to go through some formal naming process or?
Yes, for you, Mayor. Yes, we are. And I think we've had discussions around this about how we go through that process, but it will come back with the report to council at some point.
So the Muckery family are quite interested.
Thank you, councillor. Law. Anyone else information document?
Mr Mayor, I see in here that the Tintinara Aged Care Unit has renovations are now been finished. Has the CEO taking time out now to get a tenant for it?
That's the next step for you, Mayor. That is the next step, councillor. I have a woman as far as New Zealand chasing me for that unit at the moment. So,
Okay.
no, we haven't filled it. We've finished. Have we, through you, Mayor? Have we finished, Director? Finished. The next step will be to find a tenant.
Yep. We still have the name of the lady that was interested.
Yes.
Thank you. second question, Mr. Mayor, is the Director of Infrastructure and Assets. How are we going about finding more rubble pits, particularly in the southeast area of our council?
Through you, Mayor, we had a meeting today. I mentioned before, there's approximately 6 locations that we've spoken about with the construction guys today across the district. Some of them are in the southeast region. As you know, the material quality and availability further south and further east or west we go towards the ocean, the material quality becomes more sandy and less suitable for road construction. So finding suitable material in the southern parts of our region is always going to be a risk and always going to be something that we need to keep on top of. A couple of options that we've got up have been presented to us that we're going to follow up in the next week or two.
Have we been out digging exploration holes, or after your flyover in the aeroplane?
There's been excavation holes dug on numerous properties all across the district to try and find suitable material.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else that's going to come out of the information document, please? I feel we're wandering a little bit. Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Mayor, NAIDOC week, do we have an alternative date?
I'll have to take it on notice. Kelly is actually on leave for a couple of weeks, and we were looking at suitable dates that we will, but we haven't confirmed any dates yet, but we definitely will be having them.
Okay.
There was one other question I had.
It's got to come out of the information document. It's not already
out of the
question time.
information document, yeah.
Yes.
I was going to ask Miles, the statistics on the development applications seem to be a hell of a lot of other. I just wonder what other is.
I have to answer
If
that
we
next
take
question.
other out, there's probably not much, because it's not, when we take sheds out, there's not much, the dwelling hasn't been big. But also, to me, it's a little bit deceiving with our graph here, the value of development applications received. There is a explanation because of the solar farms in the previous years, but I'm just wondering if we're probably giving the community the wrong vibe and that amount, because the solar farms are not rateable. So, you know, like they can build a $200 million farm there when we don't get rates off it.
They may not be rateable, but they're
I think a
evaluation
footnote
for
to
the
that
purpose of this.
should be in it.
No, it's not about rates in this report. It would be about stats.
Yeah. But the comment was made to me, you've got, you know, $45 million worth of extra applications or developments gone on in the area. Why have you had to raise the rates? Because there's $45 million more rateable properties, which is a very good, it is a very legitimate question from a ratepayer.
As you know, councillor, in the budget process, there's a provision for growth, which is where that figure sits. As you'd also know, mostly developments that have a large, like a built environment, don't necessarily get valued at the value that was put in the front of the newspaper that day.
Yeah.
They're not valued as high as that, unlike perhaps rural land, which tends to be valued increasingly.
I think it's still relevant.
Yes. Councillor Qualman, information document, councillor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and just referring to what Councillor Arthur's saying, I looked at that one too, and what got me is, well, the way I look at it, it says applications, but what about approvals? Like you can have 100 applications and 90 get through. So don't we also give some record what actually got approved? And because some things might get knocked on the head, some things just slip through or rubber stamped. You know what I mean?
Thank you for your feedback. What we're doing is we will start to, and we're continuing to look at the statistics to make sure that they're relevant for the reader. So those two comments we will take on board and have a look at how we might present it slightly differently.
Yep, thank you.
Just one more comment, Mr. Mayor.
No comments. We only ask questions.
This is definitely the last. I had a person who put an application in for a new house. This is the third one he's built in, second one he's built in 3 years. went through the SA portal in 2 days. So the last one he put in with the council took 6 months. So the SA portal must be working because it was approved in 2 days, from application to approval.
As you know, councillor, if the applicant's complying, that case. That's the simplest way to make things go through the process easy. I'm going to say we're nearly done with the information document. Before we move to confidential items, no, next week, is it next? When's the street parade, Ashley? Next Thursday?
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday afternoon, councillors. As you know, the super sprint's returning to Tailem Bend, and it'll focus on this town in particular again. So we welcome that very much to the district again, and the street parade. Councillor Yench, around that?
Yes, on that, Mr Mayor, on the street party, the previous time we ran this, the trucks went through and it was very impressive. My concern is, in a confined space, the trucks potentially are going through, they're obviously going through it, what is within the speed limit, but I do feel, judging by the people that I watched at the last one, small children worry me excessively, and I believe that maybe their speed could be slowed a little bit, because it's like standing on a railway platform and having the train go through at Tailem Bend. It is pretty impressive, but there is an element of risk that I think we need to minimise. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, councillor Taylor, around that same subject though.
Through you, Mayor. So I would have thought that given there are no stalls or restrictions in the street, why would there be a need to have the barrier tape, etc., as close? Why wouldn't you just have it at the pavement?
Safety.
Safety is paramount.
Against anyone travelling up and down the street. Okay. Item 16 is confidential items, councillors. Sorry, the Director of Roads and Infrastructure wants to indulge the meeting. That usually means good news, Matt.
Along with the 27th, which is the street parade for the transporters, on the 28th, at Canalpin and Tintinara is the main streetscape upgrade community meetings for the community to have their feedback. And on the Friday, the 29th, which is my birthday, is the Tailem Bend one, which is Town Hall. So all meetings will be at the Town Hall. Canalpin and Tintinara on the afternoon of the 28th, 29th.
They should be in your diaries, councillors.
Yes, they are.
Spread those words around if you can to all community groups, but all people around the process of the streetscapes, please, councillors. Those watching the live stream will please be advised the meeting is about to move into confidence and the live stream will stop. For those who wish to view the end of the meeting, the video will be available on YouTube after today's